Hey, Bug Jar people. Today I'm going to talk about harmonica, and specifically I'm going to talk about how to choose your first harmonica. I started playing harmonica several years after guitar, and I was a little bit intimidated by it for a long time. I had one, and it didn't really play very good. I didn't like the way it sounded, so I just didn't really stick with harmonica very much for many, many years. I think one of the really important things if you're looking at trying harmonica is knowing how to get a good one initially. Because like guitar and like many other instruments, if you kind of pick out a bad one to start with, you won't sound good on it, it won't be fun to play, it'll be hard to learn on, and you might not enjoy it enough to stick with it. Whereas if you have a nicer instrument, you might stick with it. There's a few different big subject areas when it comes to harmonica that can help you decide how to purchase one. I'm going to show you 4 different manufacturers, and these 4 are the ones that I would pick from if I were going to get my first harmonica. There's 2 German companies and 2 Japanese companies. The 2 Japanese companies are Lee Oscar, which they have a line of harmonicas called the, I don't think that's going to show up too good, but it's called the Lee Oscar Tombow, and they're made in Japan. The other Japanese company is Suzuki, which you might know from motorcycles and things like that. Probably the most famous harmonica manufacturer is Hohner. It's a German manufacturer. And then the other German manufacturer is Seidel, which happens to be my particular favorite. Hohners are probably the one that you're the most familiar with, that you've heard in movies and things like that. A cowboy sitting in a jail cell playing one, or a guy sitting on the front porch playing some blues, probably playing a Hohner. All 4 of these companies make good harmonicas, and if I were going to get one, I would get one of them. The other manufacturers outside of these 4 companies is kind of hit and miss about whether it's a good harmonica or not, and generally speaking, it's kind of like boutique stuff that would be the good ones. So the other issue is price. If you pay less than $30 for a harmonica, the likelihood that it's a good sounding playable instrument is not real high. One of the main reasons for that is what is known as leaking. So the air, when you blow into the harmonica, ideally should go in to the sound holes that you see here on the front, activate the reeds that are inside, and then come out the other side, right? So on a nicely made harmonica, everything is sealed and airtight, and when you blow into it, air is coming out only where it's supposed to. It produces a loud sound, and it doesn't leak out air anywhere. So on cheaper harmonicas, a lot of times the actual components, like where the metal comes into the body of the harmonica, it's not a tight seal, and it's just not constructed very well. So when you blow into it, a whole bunch of the air is just going out one side or the other, something like that. And therefore, you're having to blow a lot harder to produce a sound. And the sound is not as good and not as consistent because so much of the air is bleeding off to somewhere else. So, generally speaking, with harmonicas in the 30 plus price range, that is not so much of an issue. Another issue with cheaper harmonicas is that they just kind of wear out quicker. They don't last as long. The materials they're made out of is kind of more prone to moisture and heat, which guess what? If you're using your mouth to blow into the instrument, it's going to have both of those. If I had to pick a particular one to start with, I would say get a Hohner Special 20. That is a harmonica that has a plastic body right here. Typically, like old harmonicas had a wooden body, but they have a plastic body, a metal outside case, and one of the really nice things about it is that where the body meets the metal here is flush. It's not sticking out. There's no sharp edges. On cheaper harmonicas, and a lot of times on the wooden harmonicas, the body of the harmonica, called the comb, is the technical name for it. The actual metal frame sticks outside of that comb, and so when when you're blowing on it, the metal can be really uncomfortable, and if it's if it's gotten rust or something on it, it can literally cut you and be pretty uncomfortable. So on most plastic harmonicas, which a Hohner Special 20 is, and also the Lee Oscar Tombo is, it's flush here to where that's not an issue. You can rub your mouth on it and it will not cut you. It will not be uncomfortable at all. Lee Oscar Tombo or Hohner Special 20 would be my first choice. Another thing to consider is what kind of sound you want. If you go for a wooden harmonica, you have to kind of spend a little bit more typically to get a good one. That is the classic harmonica sound. So if you want something that's got a little bit more of a classic sound, like the old blues harps and stuff, you want one with a wooden comb, okay? And actually, I have very few here with a wooden comb because I tend to like the ones with the plastic comb or the metal polymer combs. This one is a wooden comb, and this one, let's see how it sounds. So that's a pretty typical sound. Now let's go with something like a Seidel that has a little bit more modern, aggressive tone to it. It's going to be brighter than the wooden one, and the comb on this one is a metal polymer. So hopefully that comes across. This particular harmonica I'm playing right here, this Seidel, is a Seidel 1847 Noble. This is my absolute favorite harmonica. Unfortunately, they're like $110 a piece. So probably not a good beginner's harp. But Seidel does make other harmonicas along the lines of these that are not quite as expensive. They make their any of their harmonicas that come with stainless steel reeds, which they're the only ones who do that. They last longer. They tend to be louder. The reeds just don't bend and break and warp as much as a standard harmonica. That being said, they still do. I had a Seidel 1847 for about 5 years, and eventually the reeds went bad on it. But a lot of other harmonicas, after just a few months of use, the reeds will go bad, and it's really just time to get a new one rather than to worry about trying to fix it or anything. So that's something that's a little bit different than guitars. You're going to buy a $30 harmonica, you're going to play it for a while. In a year or two's time, maybe less, if you play it a lot, it's going to be bad, it's going to have bad notes on it, and you're just going to have to get another one. So that's another reason to kind of stick in that price range if you're not wanting to spend a whole bunch of money on replacing harmonicas. So just a couple final notes. Of these brands, one of the big differences is Japanese models like the Suzuki, that hole spacing is pretty narrow. Now compare that to this Seidel that I was just playing, if you can see it. So there's the Suzuki, there's the Seidel. The holes are a lot wider. Personally, for me, I find it easier to play the German style harmonicas that have the wider holes. It's a little bit harder to close off these holes individually. So I've played enough to where it's not too hard, but I find it easier on the German style. That being said, any one of these brands will be fine as long as you stick above that $30 price range. Hopefully I'll come back with another video and give you some tips on actually playing, but I thought I would at least give you an idea of what will make it a good harmonica. So I hope you enjoyed this, and stick around for more bug jars in the future.